Part 98. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 973. Of course I can, Xiaobao said confidently, fourth uncle, I'm very good. Qi Heiran looked at him suspiciously, I've never heard of an emperor who wanted to run away all day long. Xiaobao slumped his shoulders, and said sadly, fourth uncle, you don't understand, I don't want to go out all the time, but I hope to go out once a year, or once every 2 years, even if it's for inspection. Qi Heiran was slightly relieved, and waved his hand nonchalantly, what's the problem? You can go on tour when you become the emperor. If you want to go south, you can go south. If you want to go north, you can go north. You can go anywhere you want. Xiaobao's eyes lit up, I'm so stupid, I didn't think of this idea. Qi Heiran rolled his eyes at him, thinking that a child is just a child, so he ran away from home just because of this. You should think about how to explain this to your father. Xiaobao's face became bitter again. Qi Heiran squatted in front of Qi Wensu's little friend, pinched his nose and said, you're really stupid, your brother brought you out of Beijing and you just follow? Don't you know the danger? The second prince smiled foolishly, and said, with the elder brother of the prince here, I am not afraid. Qi Heiran could only helplessly pat the heads of the two children to let them rest. Because there were guards clearing the way, they were much faster, and they arrived in Guangzhou at noon the next day. Qi Heiran had his brothers and sisters Huangren and Keshangtan take them down to rest first, and he carried the two children to the mansion. Zhu Liang hurriedly greeted him, seeing the crown prince's eyes staring at the prince, he couldn't help but froze on the spot. He knew that there might be a distinguished guest in the mansion, but he didn't expect the guest to be so honorable. Where are the princess and young masters? Zhu Liang thought about it and said, didn't the young masters be punished by the prince and grounded in the Fan mansion? Qi Heiran paused, nodded, and said, yes, I almost forgot, so I went to tell the concubine, and said that the cousins of their second uncle's family are here, let them come over, and invite Mr. An to come over by the way. Zhu Liang looked at His Highness the Crown Prince respectfully, and felt that the Lord's nonsense was too much. I'm afraid that you don't even know the name of An Lihao's child, but you put His Highness the Crown Prince and the second prince under his name. An Lihao's life was broken. Qi Heiran doesn't know if this move will affect An Lihao's longevity. He knows that a suitable identity must be arranged for the two children. Xiaobao has already called him fourth uncle in public. When he arrived in Guangzhou, everyone in the city knew that he had two nephews who had come to join him. Apart from the princes and Zijin's family, the only ones who dare to call him fourth uncle in this world are the children of his two concubines, so he has no choice but to borrow his identity. Anyway, the sky is high and the emperor is far away, so his concubine may not know. As soon as Qi Heiran carried the two children to the backyard and put them down, there was a sound like howling wolves outside. The little bear rushed in like a gust of wind, ignored Qi Heiran, and rushed towards Xiaobao. Xiaobao was also very happy, and opened his arms are about to go up. Qi Heiran's face darkened, and he reached out and picked up the little bear that was flying towards him. The little bear jumped in the air and shouted, Father, Father, Brother Xiaobao, Brother Xiaobao. Shouting as if parting from life and death, Qi Heiran's face darkened even more. Before he had time to reprimand, there was another howl of wolves outside. After scanning, he automatically skipped his father and elder brother, and ran towards Xiaobao and Qi Wensu. Surrounded by his cousins, Little Treasure quickly forgot about Little Bear. The five of them hugged each other, then looked at each other happily and giggled. Qi Heiran couldn't bear to help his forehead, so he could only put the little bear down, turned his head to look at Aling who walked in from behind, and asked, how did these boys recover so quickly? Their buttocks just turned red. After a smear of ointment, they'll be fine the next day after a night's sleep. How long do you think your light beating can keep them lying down? Qi Heiran blushed, and muttered, Master obviously worked hard. Mu Yangling hee-heed, and said, Zijin is very angry, scolding you for pampering the child so much. He said, when Xiaobao arrives, the five will be punished together, and no one can escape. The children listening to the sound with their ears erect were stunned for a moment, and all looked at Chi Heiran in unison, not too pitiful in their eyes. Chi Heiran also felt that the children were going too far this time, so he hugged the second prince, and said, you all need to be disciplined, no one is allowed to stop you this time. I will beat them up first tomorrow, and Zijin will punish you later. Zijin, who had just entered the room, couldn't help but cast a cold glance at him when he heard this, and stared at him until he shut up before looking coldly at the five children. The five people who were still jubilant suddenly tensed their backs and stood in a row involuntarily. Fan Zijin said coldly, let's not count the second prince's young age and ignorance. One of the five of you counts as one. I will kneel in the small ancestral hall for all of you. The five children were shrouded in Fan Zijin's low pressure, and they didn't dare to look at Chi Heiran and his wife who were on the side, so they hurriedly walked towards the small ancestral hall with their heads down. The tiger head and the little lion thought they had gone far enough, so they whispered, in fact, we are also very young. I am only 5 years old this year, and I am only 1 year older than my second cousin. I am also very naive. How about we talk to Dad when he comes to see us? Brother Xiaoan is not very old, and Dad has always loved Brother Xiaoan more, so maybe he can be exempted from punishment. The voices of the two children overlapped, only Big Brother and Brother Xiaobao are so pitiful. Fan Zijin glared at Chi Heiran when he heard the voice. Chi Heiran resisted his anger and said in a low voice, it's okay for the four of them, if they are strong, they will be fined if they are punished, but Xiaobao is probably very tired after driving for 10 days. Since rushing didn't make him tired, why would kneeling make him tired? Fan Zijin said with a cold face, Chi Heiran, this time you are not allowed to spoil the children indiscriminately, and if you don't teach them, they will become more lawless. This time if you dare to leave the palace, will you dare to leave the country next time? Where can we find someone? Seeing that Mu Yangling wanted to talk, he glared at her again, shut up too, Heiran is ignorant, and you don't know? You are so courageous at a young age, and you can pay back when you grow up. You should be ruthless this time. Hans, if you don't make them feel afraid, they will only do more outrageous things in the future. They are children now, and they can use their young age as an excuse. How many more years will they grow? What reason? Will the courtiers accept their reason? The couple bowed their heads together and dared not speak. Xiao Xia, who was standing outside the door, was stunned for a moment when she saw her husband showing great power. She always knew that the prince and Aling seemed to be a little afraid of her husband, but since she got married, whether it was family or outside affairs, her husband followed the rules of the prince and his wife. It's up to her opinion, this is the first time she has seen her husband train the two of them so hard that they can't hold their heads up. Fan Zijin turned around and went out. When he saw her, he stopped and said, why are you here too? The mansion has been in chaos for the past 2 days, and some adjustments need to be made in the next world. You go back and take care of Xiaofu, so that he won't be frightened. Seeing the Lord and Aling who were hanging their heads behind, Xiao Xia nodded repeatedly, then I'll go back now, and let the girl come to find my concubine if I have anything to order. Fan Zijin nodded. This time, Fan Zijin really dealt with them ruthlessly, making them kneel until dinner at night before letting them get up, but the matter was not over. Early the next morning, several children were pulled up one by one, and only Wiped the Face continued to kneel down to the small ancestral hall. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 974. The children never knew how uncomfortable it was to kneel in the ancestral hall. Hutu moved his knees carefully, feeling his legs numb and his stomach rumbling with hunger. Fan Zijin walked towards the morning light at this moment, he glanced at the 5 children one by one, and was satisfied when he saw them lower their heads one by one under his gaze. It is necessary to teach children the truth, but corporal punishment is also very important. If the 5 boys before could calm down and listen to them. Fanzijin looked at them condescendingly, and asked, "Can you listen to what I'm saying now?" The 5 boys nodded repeatedly, all looking at him timidly and pleadingly. Satisfied, Fanzijin said in a calm voice, "Then you should start to reflect on what you did wrong this time, and think about the dangers and possible consequences that Xiaobao will encounter when he leaves the palace. When do you start eating?" Fanzijin took out a piece of paper from his sleeve, threw it in front of Xiaobao, and said, "This is a letter from your father, please read it. This time, you broke his heart." Taking the opportunity to educate a few boys is not only Fanzijin's intention, but also Qi Xiaoyuan's intention. These children are really lawless. Xiaobao picked up the letter, his eyes gradually filled with tears, and the tears fell drop by drop. Little Xiang looked at him anxiously, and asked in a low voice, "Brother Xiaobao, don't be sad, let's ask Uncle Huang to forgive you." Xiaobao shook his head, "Even if father forgives me, I still hurt father's heart and made him worry for a long time." In the letter, Qi Xiaoyuan asked Xiaobao, "You said that you would hurt your father's heart if you brothers killed each other, so you don't want to hurt your father's heart, but now, if you put yourself and your brother in danger, you won't break my heart?" Qi Xiaoyuan said, "Father is very sad now." Little Bear became entangled, not knowing how to comfort Xiaobao. Xiaobao wiped away his tears, and said, "We were wrong, even if the emperor doesn't agree, I can beg him, or try to persuade him, or even find an excuse to leave the capital, but I shouldn't leave the city without telling him don't." Little Xiang scratched his head, rolled up his sleeves and wiped his tears. "Brother Xiaobao, don't cry, we will write to Uncle Huang to admit our mistakes in a while, and we will never do this again next time." Xiaobao nodded. The 3rd child knelt on the side clutching her belly, feeling that they were going to starve to death, so they all confessed their mistakes to the adults and begged for mercy. The 5 children were taken to the flower hall. The dining table was full of steamed buns, rice porridge, and exquisite side dishes. The 5 children swallowed their saliva in unison. The sadness of Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang also flew away with the hunger. "Look at the goodies on the table." At the table, sat 4 adults. Fanzijin picked up the bowl and said, "Since you're here, let's watch." So the 5 children stood side by side to watch the 4 adults have breakfast. The 3rd child couldn't help but burst into tears, looked at the adults helplessly, and sobbed softly, "Father, Mother, I'm hungry." Fanzijin put down the bowl and chopsticks, looked at them and asked, "Does it feel good to be hungry?" The 5 children shook their heads together, and Fanzijin said, "The road is dangerous. If Xiaobao runs away from home and encounters thieves or robbers who rob him of all his money, he will only be hungry. You stay at home and follow daddy." Mother shouts, "Hungry, parents love you and will give you something to eat, but outside, when you can't find parents, you just cry your throat out, who cares about you?" Huda looked at Xiaobao with his mouth open, and sobbed, "Brother Xiaobao is so pitiful that no one cares about his hunger." The little lion promised, "Brother Xiaobao, don't worry, we will feed you first and then we will eat." Xiaoan squeezed into the middle of them, glaring at them from left to right. The 2 children instantly knew that they had said something wrong, and immediately lowered their heads to admit their mistake. Fanzijin glanced at his son, snorted coldly, pointed to the leftovers, and said, "Eat." The 5 children rushed forward immediately, while the kid Qi Wensu was completely at a loss as he stood aside. Fanzijin said, "Although you are young and you were exempted from punishment because you didn't know how to persuade your brother along the way, so you were also at fault, so I punished you to starve with them. Now that the punishment is over, let's eat too." Little Treasure didn't expect that he would also implicate his young second brother, so he hurriedly grabbed a small steamed bun and stuffed it into his mouth, saying, "Eat it quickly, brother." Chi Wensu quietly moved to Mu Yangling's side holding the steamed bun, snuggled up to her side, and looked at Fan Zijian in fear. Fan Zijian couldn't help but slander, "Could it be that he is a scourge?" Mu Yangling couldn't help but hug Chi Wensu and sat down beside him, and personally made porridge for him and took care of him for breakfast. After the meal, Fan Zijian took the 6 children out, euphemistically calling them to deeply understand their own mistakes. Chi Heiran hurriedly followed. He first took the children to look at the beggars squatting there at the base of the city wall, and said, "Xiaobao, if there are no hidden guards around you, your father and the emperor will not be able to find you in time. If there is a mistake on the road, they will be you the best end, becoming a beggar. Do you know what they eat, what they wear, what they sleep every day?" The faces of the 6 children gradually paled, and Fan Zijian continued as if he couldn't see it, "You are okay, you are already 8 years old, and in a few years, even if you can't find your way back to the palace, you can find some simple jobs to support yourself, but your brother, he is only 4 years old, what should he do? There is no doctor, no medicine, not even enough food and clothing, just a small wind and cold can kill a person. Little bear, Xiaoan, tiger head, little lion, what will happen to you as accomplices then?" Fan Zijian let the 6 children watch beggars for a long time, then turned around and took them to the prison in the government office to meet the prisoners. He said, "I said before, being a beggar is the best end, the second is to fall into the hands of traffickers. Do you know where the traffickers will sell you?" Chi Heiran frowned slightly, and wanted to say that he shouldn't stimulate the children so much, so he met Fan Zijian's cold eyes. "They are never ordinary children, except for Xiaoan, which one of them is not the prince and grandson? Since the tiger head and the little lion are not afraid, of course, my son is not afraid. Human traffickers in this era, except for a few who will resell people's teeth second-hand and send them to current people, most of them are sent to dirty places such as brothels, chugwan, etc. Most of the girls do not have a good end, let alone boys, most of them will not survive 20, and some were sent to the palace to be castrated as eunuchs. Fan Zijian is the magistrate and a businessman who has acquainted with all kinds of schools, so he knows these things best. Fan Zijian took them to see the traffickers to let them know how they photograph children, so that they would not think that everything would be fine with the help of Huangren brothers and sisters. Got to Guangzhou smoothly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 975. When he brought out 6 more children, their faces were all pale. Fan Zijian took them into the carriage, returned to the mansion, and waited for them to calm down before he said quietly, "It's not good to be caught by human traffickers, but you can probably survive." The 2 children shook their heads in unison. "It was you who met robbers who murdered and robbed you for money. They robbed you of your belongings and then directly killed them and threw them in mass graves. You didn't know how you died until you died, and neither did your family members. I know, it may be difficult to find someone, but as long as a person is alive, there is hope, but when a person is dead, where do you tell the adults to find you? The search without hope is the most painful." Hudu sniffed, turned his head to look at Chi Heiran and said, "Thieves, human traffickers and robbers are all too hateful, Daddy, you can arrest them all." The little lion said, "Are there any children of those beggars under the wall who have been robbed of all their money and can't go home? How about we help them?" And the children who were sold to the brothel and chugwan, that the second uncle said, "We all have children, look carefully, but what is the brothel chugwan?" Fan Zijian and Chi Heiran stared at the little lion with dark faces. Xiaoan also nodded. He directly skipped the last question of little lion, turned to Xiaobao and little bear and said, "Big cousin, second cousin, I think your philanthropy is very good. I would like to borrow my pocket money for you guys. The tiger head and the little lion are more generous. Big brother, we will give you our money. The second prince also stammered that he would support their charity. Fanzijan stared at them with a dark face. Chi-Heiran's worried expression disappeared. He shrugged his shoulders and said, "Look, I said it's not a problem with our education, they are born with thick brains, it's none of my business." Fanzijan glared at him, "Aren't they born by you?" Chi-Heiran cried out, "It's not just my son in it, your son and your eldest brother's son are also in it." Fanzijan looked at Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang, who had raised a lot of money in a short while, and walked away angrily. Although an educational event was turned into a charity fundraising event by the children still said that they had received a profound education and would remember the lessons of this incident and would never do it again. Look better. So, instead of punishing them for kneeling, Fanzijan punished them for copying and writing big characters. Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang copied the Book of Filial Piety 30 times, while the four young ones copied 500 sheets of big characters. Even Qi Wensu, who had just learned to read, couldn't escape. But the children didn't have a bitter face, instead they breathed a sigh of relief. They finally didn't have to kneel as punishment. And the follow-up development of this matter was not hidden from the children. Mu Yangling told them how many things they had done to cover up the whereabouts of Xiaobao and Wensu. First of all, the outside world is still rumored that the king of Rongjun and his wife had a quarrel, and the prince left home in anger. Chi-Heiran was going to pick up people before, but he couldn't let outsiders know about it. In addition, he beat up the four children before, so he let the situation flow. The prince locked up the children because they caused trouble with the princess and quarreled with the princess. He ran out to relax himself. Although they brought back two nephews when they were relaxing, the general public subconsciously ignored this point. Everyone thought that the prince brought back his illegitimate children, and the reason why the prince and princess quarreled was because of these two illegitimate children. The prince dotes on the child so much, he will quarrel with the princess because of the child's trouble? Everyone thinks that the prince did not dare to take concubines because of the prestige of the princess, so it is inevitable that he raised two Xiehuayu outside. Who knew that the aftermath work was not done well, and he had an illegitimate child, and the illegitimate child was raised in the capital before. For some reason, illegitimate children after finding it, the princess found out, and a war broke out between the couple. After hearing the rumors, Mu Yangling just felt that everyone didn't know how to think about them in a positive way, and distorted the facts like this abruptly. Chi-Heiran was furious, and swore to Mu Yangling, "I have never even touched other women's little hands in my life, so where did I get two illegitimate children? It's unreasonable." Instead, Mu Yangling comforted him, "Rumors stop with wise men, and we will stop this matter slowly. That can't make them spread rumors." But in fact, the rumors are not controlled by the couple. At least so far, many people have acquiesced that Xiaobao and the second prince are Chi-Heiran's illegitimate children, including many officers and soldiers in the government office and navy office. Fanzijan said that if he hadn't known the inside story, he will also believe this rumor. Secondly, everyone helped Xiaobao and Qi Wensu to forge their identities as Qi Shaosheng's son. In order to be more realistic, Qi Xiaoyuan specially asked the queen to summon Su, saying that concubine Wu is not in good health recently, and her grandchildren should go to the temple to pray for her. So, Su's two sons and Xiao Wu's son were sent to the temple. In order to fake the illusion that His Highness the Crown Prince had never left the palace, the emperor directly stopped the lectures at the Imperial Academy, and only let the Prince Shaofu and the other two doctors enter the palace to give lectures on time. In other words, there are three ministers who know the inside story that the prince is not in the palace, but it is unknown how many people in the harem know the inside story, and obviously, no matter how many people know, once bad rumors spread, Xiao the status of the treasure may be threatened. In the end, Qi Xiaoyuan, In order to control the second prince's biological mother, concubine Zhao, found another reason to ground her for a long time. Even the queen could no longer summon her natal family, which shows the impact of this matter. Mu Yangling looked at the children and said, "Now do you know how much we have done to wipe your butts?" Several children bowed their heads deeply. Only Hutu and the second prince looked around blankly. Xiaobao reviewed and said, "Fourth aunt, I know I was wrong. I will never leave the capital without permission again. I should ask my father first. Even if my father refuses to agree, I can wait for me to become the emperor. The emperor will go on tour again." "Wait a minute, what did you say just now? Say it again." Mu Yangling looked at Xiaobao worriedly. "Is this kid going to be another Emperor Kangxi?" Xiaobao said, "It's good to travel after becoming the emperor. I can also inspect the officials along the way." Mu Yangling smiled hee and asked someone to find a large drawing paper. "Ordinary paper is too small and not enough, we use this." Mu Yangling asked people to take away all the things on the desk, and spread the paper on the table, just covering it. Mu Yangling stained it with ink, and asked, "Do you know what I want this paper for?" The 6 children shook their heads. Mu Yangling smiled like an angel, "I want to roughly calculate the approximate cost of Xiaobao's tour after becoming emperor." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 976. Mu Yangling hadn't studied Qing history specifically, but because it wasn't very old, even if she didn't study it in depth, she still knew some common sense that she should know. Emperor Kangxi is very powerful, but at the same time, he is also very extravagant. His extravagance is not manifested in his daily life, but in his several trips to the south of the Yangtze River. Officials along the coast spent their money like flowing water in order to pick them up. Emperor Kangxi said that he should save money, but in fact he said that the officials built gardens and bought exotic flowers and plants. But the salary of the officials is only that. Where do they get the money? It is either exploited from the people or borrowed from the national treasury, and in the end it comes from the people. Yang Zheng was so cruel to his brother. Why did he still get such a high evaluation in the history books? Because what he took over from Kangxi was a mess, a dynasty that was prosperous on the surface but decayed on the inside. The second half of the prosperity of Kangxi and Qianlong was supported, and the first half was laid by Kangxi. As for the prodigal son of Qianlong, he was dedicated to consuming the wealth accumulated by his father and the Qingming officials. Who he admired most was Kangxi God, not his father. It can be said that Qianlong and Jiaozong of the great Zhou dynasty were like brothers in trouble. Mu Yangling didn't want his little treasure to grow up to be like Kangxi and Qianlong, spending money like running water and blindly prodigal. The southern tour has benefits, but compared with its harms, those benefits are almost negligible. Mu Yangling spread out the paper and wrote down one by one, the emperor's traveling chariots, horses and ceremonies, accompanying guards and royal guards, as well as accompanying palace servants, food and accommodation along the way, pickups along the way, as well as palaces or gardens built for pickup, rare treasures that officials want to collect. The data obtained made the 5 children's mouths wide open. Only the second prince, who didn't know the magic of money, looked at the 5 elder brothers blankly, wondering why they all gasped, looking so shocked. Sang Xiao and Xiao Xiang all looked at Xiaobao accusingly, and said, "You are so rich." Xiao Bao hurriedly shook his hand. "I don't have any money now." After a pause, he continued, "My father's internal treasury doesn't have that much money. Even if I have so much money after I become emperor, I can't bear to spend it just to go out so much." Mu Yangling put down his pen and said, "This is still a conservative estimate. If the officials who pick up the driver blindly seek novelty and money, I'm afraid they won't be able to beat the 2 million. Do you know how much Emperor Sui Yang will spend next time? During this period, countless people and money will be wasted. Don't say it's for patrolling, you're traveling in a holy car, Don't the local officials dare to let you see beggars walking along the street, and the victims starve to death? It's been whitewashed for a long time, Xiaobao. I said let you come out to see the outside world and experience it. I didn't ask you to go on tour like this. Although it is wrong for you to leave the palace this time, what you see is the most real people's livelihood. Xiaobao thought about it. Don't think that after you become the emperor, you will take the royal driver out with an order. It will not only harm the people, but also yourself. It is recorded in the history books, and you will only get a compliment to show the prestige of the country. I'm afraid it's more about scolding you for being extravagant, but you are actually very frugal. Do you think you're wronged? Xiaobao nodded fiercely. It's an unjust death. Mu Yangling touched his head and said, Fourth Aunt doesn't have any good opinions on your trip to Beijing for training, but your proposal is obviously not good. Let's think about it slowly. If it doesn't work, you can save the place you want to go to. I will give the Zen seat to your son and come out to play again. Xiaobao pouted and said, This is my fourth uncle's idea, not mine. Mu Yangling gritted his teeth, thinking that Qi Heiran's ideas were all bad ideas. Seeing that they finished talking, the second prince raised his little hand and asked, Fourth Aunt, can we go out to see the sea today? I have never seen the sea since I grew up. I haven't seen it either, Xiaobao shouted. Mu Yangling smiled, How old are you? Just say something like this. That's fine. Let Little Bear take you there, but you have to come back early in the afternoon. Also, don't go into the sea. The 6 children hurriedly responded and ran out happily. Mu Yangling took the bill on the table to Qi Heiran to settle the score, so that he would give the children less bad ideas. Mu Yangling spread the bill in front of his eyes, and said, Look, the advice you provided, Xiaobao's travel expenses after he ascended the throne. Qi Heiran's eyes widened, and he shouted, You distorted the meaning of the master. How could it cost so much for a trip? Then who among the emperors of the past dynasties went out for pure play or inspection, and how much did they spend? Qi Heiran stared. Mu Yangling counted with his fingers, I don't study much, and the only ones I can count are Qin Shiwang and Sui Yangdi, and Zhou Shizong, but it is said that he only walked halfway, and seeing the huge expenses, he was very heartbroken. On the way back, I also killed several corrupt officials who used the mouth of the emperor to corrupt and search for the people. Who else is there besides them? There are too many. Several emperors of the Tang dynasty have traveled. Oh, where did they go and how much did they cost? Qi Heiran frowned, I'm not a scholar of the Hanlin Academy, how can I know where they went and how much they spent? In short, the cost will not be so high, otherwise the courtiers would have fallen out. That must be a lot. Do you know how much our family of 5 spent traveling from the south to the north, eating, drinking, living, and having fun? Qi Heiran looked at Mu Yangling. 200 taels is enough for the sky, but it is frugal for the emperor to travel 200,000 taels a time. If, like Emperor Yang of the Sui dynasty, people build palaces in advance and search for rare treasures, 2 million taels may not be enough. 200 won, think about the rattling silver. Qi Heiran sat on the chair with a stern face for a while, and said, When Xiaobao comes back, the master will tell him that he is not allowed to travel with the imperial car. Don't worry, you don't need to talk about it. Who do you think the bill was calculated for? When the kid sees the ledger, he won't be driven out of Beijing if he is killed. The kid is holding it. That's what you taught. Qi Heiran muttered in a low voice. He felt that boys would not change their lack of money. Of course, daughters should be richer. Thinking of his daughter, Qi Heiran couldn't help but look at Mu Yangling's belly, touched her belly, and said, Aling, let the king, the imperial doctor will show you. Hutu and the others are 5 years old, why don't we have a daughter yet? Mu Yangling's face turned dark when she saw that he was digressing, but she also wanted to have a beautiful, well-behaved daughter. Seeing her thinking, Chi Heiran immediately hugged her and begged, "Why don't you find a few more doctors to show you? Imperial Physician Wang is only one person, so there may be some omissions." Mu Yangling twisted his waist and said, "We're talking about business. Is there a bigger business than this? If you don't object, it's as if you agree. Why is it only me who sees it? It may also be your problem." "How is this possible?" Chi Heiran said confidently. "Men all over the world have problems, and it is impossible for him to have problems." Mu Yangling snorted and said, "Anyway, if you don't look at it, I won't look at it either. We have to watch it together." Chi Heiran hurriedly coaxed her, okay, I will stay with you. You are so old, how can you hide your illness and avoid medical treatment?" The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 977. Physician Wang explained that the couple's delay in conceiving is due to fate, because both of them are in good health, and the doctor who came to see the couple also said that the couple is healthy and there is no problem. Physician Wang comforted the two of them. "It's good to let nature take its course. Sometimes the more anxious you are, the more difficult it is to conceive. We have never been in a hurry, but we have never been pregnant." Chi Heiran is really not in a hurry. Although he wants to have another daughter, he also wants to have a few more boys, but he already has 3 sons, all of whom are born on the same day. "I am much better than others, so I am looking forward to pregnancy but not demanding. How can this be called anxious?" He rushed to see a doctor because he was afraid that Aling's health would be hindered. After all, when she gave birth to twins, it was not smooth, and Wang Tai had always been the doctor in the mansion. Chi Heiran couldn't say clearly that he didn't believe a single doctor. "Feeling the pulse, so I wanted to find a few more people, so I could only use this as an excuse." Knowing that Aling is in good health, although he is not pregnant, Chi Heiran is still happy to go out to pick up a few children. The 6 children were standing by the sea with their waists pinched at the moment. Xiaobao and the second prince, who saw the sea for the first time, opened their mouths wide. It was impossible to describe their surging emotions for a while. "Xiang, I finally know why you told me not to be the emperor. The outside world is so vast, and I really want to ride the wind and waves." Little Xiang pinched his waist and laughed. "Don't worry, I will bring you a copy of whatever interesting things I see when I go out, and I will also write to tell you about the scenery outside." Xiaobao looked at Little Bear with envy and hatred, and began to think about it seriously. In fact, the time for his meditation position can be advanced a little bit. The 4 children taught the brothers to pick up the sea goods that washed up on the shore, and the little bear said, "My mother said that there are rich and precious resources in the sea. Although I don't know what there are, they must be very precious. Otherwise, why do those foreigners always live in the sea? In the sea, why did we come to Daki? So brothers Iobeo, we must not give up on the sea. Things like the Forbidden Sea are retreated again and again." Little Treasure nodded seriously, and said, "The sea is so beautiful. If the sea is forbidden, wouldn't I not be able to see it? I will try my best to persuade the emperor not to prohibit the sea anymore. Uncle Huang will definitely not ban the sea. With my father here, I want you not to ban the sea after you become the emperor. You'd better give your son an order not to ban the sea." Xiaobao said distressedly, "Then what if my son doesn't listen to me? Like Emperor Jiaozong of the Great Zhou, he didn't listen to his father. Emperor Sejong also gave an order not to ban the sea. Then don't make him emperor. He can be obedient and disobedient. I am older than him, and I will definitely die earlier than him. When he disobeys me, I won't be able to destroy him." Little Xiang looked at him contemptuously. "My mother said, there are no bad children in this world, only parents who can't teach their children. It must be because you can't teach them well that your children and grandchildren are unworthy." Xiaobao was angry. "I don't know how to teach, can you teach?" Little Xiang proudly said, "Of course," he said with a swipe of his hand forward, "I taught the 3 of them, You see how obedient they are. Xiao Bao curled his lips, and said bluntly, yesterday, my fourth uncle called you bear children, and almost pissed him off to death. How are they so good? Look at my second, third, and fourth brothers, they are so good. I played with them, and I know how to teach children better than you. My dad's catchphrase is humility. He likes us the most. How could he be so mad? This is what Uncle Si said. My father just said so, but he definitely doesn't think so. The two children quarreled red-faced and almost moved their hands. Hutio Yu ran up to watch and shouted, "Stop quarreling, it's not a good boy to quarrel." Little Xiong and Xiaobao turned their heads and looked at him seriously. "We're not arguing, we're discussing, so let's go, kids." "You are also children, why tell me to go aside?" Huta glared at them angrily. Little Lion and Little An led the second prince to surround them one after another, persuading them, "We are here to play at the beach, don't quarrel, quarreling is not a good boy." Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang shouted aggrievedly, "We didn't quarrel." Hutu insisted, "You guys just quarreled," shouting so loudly that it scared me. Each of the 6 children said a word, and the beach instantly became noisy like a vegetable market. The dark guard squatting on the beach blatantly squeezed the sand curiously, glanced at the 6 children, saw that they were standing some distance from the sea water, and everyone only talked but did not move, so they continued to observe the beach curiously. It's really difficult for them, a group of hidden guards, to hide on the beach. It's too open, so they can't hide on the rocks, right? A wave hits it and it gets wet, but in the end it still has to show its whereabouts. This is simply a taboo for being a hidden guard. The secret guard looked enviously at the guards standing beside him. No wonder the secret guard who followed the 4 young masters became a guard. It is the wish of all dark guards to live under the sun. The 6 children became louder and louder, and the guard following the little bear had to remind him, "Master, don't you want to take the young masters to see the sea?" "That's right, brother Xiaobao, let's go see the sea clams inside are so big now," little bear said hoarsely. The sound was a bit broken when he shouted too loudly just now. Xiaobao didn't argue anymore, and happily agreed, took his second brother's hand and said, "Then let's go now. By the way, is the sea far away?" "Not far." So, the little friends went to the beach hand in hand, and the tiger head was sandwiched between the little lion and Xiaoan, and he said to the two seriously, "Brother and brother Xiaobao had a quarrel just now, but they still don't admit it, mistakes are bad boys." Xiaoan said calmly, "They're just loud, it's not considered a quarrel, it will be counted when they fight." "Huh?" Hutu asked suspiciously, "But last time I didn't fight with the little lion and you also said that we were fighting. Mother punished me to eat 1 less chicken leg because of this. It turns out that fighting is considered a fight." "Humph, go back, I will ask my mother to return the chicken leg to me." "Xiaoan. Little lion, you obviously went to persuade them to fight, why did you quarrel with them instead?" Hutu was very aggrieved. "That's because they didn't admit their mistakes, and they didn't listen to persuasion. When you came to persuade us, we all stopped immediately." The 3 quarrel groups are Tiger Head and Little Lion, Tiger Head and Xiaoan, but no matter which group it is, as long as the third person stands up and persuades, the 2 friends can reconcile as before and stop arguing. Hutu has never been a quarrel maker, never tried to persuade a fight, so when he saw 2 brothers quarreling just now, he ran over to try to persuade them when he was excited, but he didn't know how to persuade them, but he also participated in the fight. Xiaoan concluded, "You are just too stubborn." When the 3 of them always have differences of opinion, Xiaoan and Xiaoshi can persuade each other with words. Basically, the atmosphere is quite peaceful, but Hutu is sure about one thing and rushes forward, so it is difficult to persuade him. Both the little lion and Xiaoan are children, impatient enough, and the 2 sides quarreled if they said a few words and didn't change their tiger head. The tiger head and the little lion have fought twice, and the winner has not been decided yet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 978. Xiaobao and the second prince settled down in Guangzhou, and in the capital, people also discussed their fate. On behalf of all the gentlemen, Fang Ziwen said that His Royal Highness's classes cannot be suspended for too long, so if the emperor can't let the prince return to Beijing, then they have to go to Guangzhou. Rongxian and Yan Du also said that the prince should not leave Beijing for too long, otherwise it would be easy to change. Qi Ziyuan agreed with a smile, saying that the prince will definitely be able to return to Beijing before the Chinese New Year. The insiders sitting below looked at each other, knowing that the emperor intends to fulfill the wish of His Highness the Crown Prince and let him stay in Guangzhou for a while. It seems that the root cause of King Rong's love for his son also comes from this. Several people reluctantly agreed. Fang Ziwen walked out together with the left and right ministers. Yan Du sighed and said, "I'm afraid it's not the country's luck that the prince is so willful." Fang Ziwen frowned slightly. His Highness the Crown Prince has always been smart and well behaved. Although there was something wrong with going out of Beijing privately this time, it was not enough. Yan Du's words were too much. He glanced at him dissatisfied, and was about to say something for the Crown Prince. Rongxian said with a smile, "The prince is only 8 years old, he is still a child, not to mention that he has always been well behaved. Even if he has always been so naughty, we can't make a conclusion before he grows up to be naughty. The princes combined are not half as good as King Rong, but you can see that he is still making great achievements." Yan Du twitched the corners of his mouth, and said, "I have caused a lot of trouble." Rongxian smiled lightly, "But it's not a big deal." Fang Ziwen also laughed, "And the trouble caused by King Rong can be resolved by himself." Yan Du shook his head slightly when he saw that the two of them were standing by the prince's side. "Jinyu, Zishuan, the prince can change it in the future. If he doesn't change his temper, we will have trouble." Jinyu is Rongxian's character, Zichuan is Fang Ziwen's character. Seeing that he mentioned characters instead of official positions, he knew that he was talking to them as a friend, but both Fang Ziwen and Rongxian just smiled. Fang Ziwen has no choice but to retreat. He is the prince's young master, he is the prince's teacher. If the prince succeeds in enthroning, he is the emperor's tutor. If the prince fails, his whole family will have no way to survive. Besides, he really doesn't think the prince is bad. Yan Du is the right minister, and he doesn't spend much time with the prince, but he gets along with the prince day and night. He knows that the child is sensitive and intelligent, kind, but can stick to his own opinions. From the perspective of a successful king, there is no one more suitable than him. It's too hasty to doubt Xiao's position just because he ran out of the capital for fun. But Rongxian's reasons are much simpler. Both the emperor and Heiran think that the prince is good, and the prince has not made a big mistake, and he is the emperor's eldest son, so he will not allow anyone to shake Xiaobao's position as the prince. Seeing that they didn't speak, Yan Du knew that the two of them disagreed with his point of view, so he didn't say much, and went home after leaving the palace, but he was a little dissatisfied with the prince in his heart, thinking that it was too childish for him to go out of Beijing without permission. At this time, the emperor was sitting in the cunning palace with a sigh, took the tea from the queen's hand, and said, "Since Xiaobao wants to go out to meet the world, let him stay in Guangzhou for a while, and come back after winter, so as not to be depressed. Watching him makes him yearn for the outside world even more." Li Jinghua nodded eagerly. She was always worried, for fear that there would be a rift between their father and son because of this matter, and seeing that Qi Ziyuan was not disappointed in his son, she was relieved. "I am also relieved that my fourth uncle and Aling are taking him, and let them persuade him. He has listened to his 4 uncles and 4 aunts since he was a child." Qi Ziyuan nodded, thought for a while and said, "Recently, you have paid attention to some Zhao concubines." Although she doesn't know where Xiaobao and Xiao are, she must have guessed that they are not in the palace now. Don't let the news spread. Li Jinghua's face turned serious, and said, "Don't worry, the emperor, my concubine will not let any news from the harem to the outside of the palace." Qi Xiaoyuan sighed, "Xiaobao is used to living with Heiran's family, I'm not worried, I'm only worried about Xiao Er, the child is only 4 years old, and he just left the palace of his mother and concubine, and I don't know if he's used to it in Guangzhou." Li Jinghua suggested, "It's better to send Xiao Er's personal servant to him, and he is still young, so he needs a nurse to take him with him." Qi Xiaoyuan thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Since he wanted to send someone to the second prince, Xiaobao's personal servants would naturally send 1 or 2 there, and their daily necessities would go with them. Within 2 days, the 3 carriages quietly left the palace and headed south. At this time, the second prince, who was worried and not used to it, was lying on the desk and whispering to Hutu, and the 2 little heads came together, laughing lowly from time to time. The little lion and the little lion sat on the chair honestly and flipped through the picture book to read and write. Xiaobao was writing with a pen in his hand. He twitched the corners of his mouth, first stood behind Xiaobao and Xiaoxiang to look at their homework, then stood beside the 4 little ones, patted their heads, and said, "Put away the other things, and put away the Analects of Confucius. Take it out, and I will give you a lecture." Xiaoan and Little Lion tidied up the desk obediently, while Hutu and the second prince were a little bit sorry, knowing that they had to listen to the lecture honestly. Mu Yangling gave the children a 3-day vacation, and asked Xiaoxiang to take them around Guangzhou city to get acquainted with the environment, and then the class officially started, and the missing classes had to be made up. Little Treasure is studying the strategy of governing the country, and his usual study of history accounts for most of it, and then he also dabbles in the books of other schools of thought, while Xiaoxiang is only roughly learning the 4 books, and is beginning to dabble in military books. Xiaoan is already reading the 4 books, and unlike Xiaoxiang, who only needs to know the general meaning and memorize roughly, Xiaoan needs to study carefully, but it is easier for the twins and the second prince. They are still in the literacy stage, and it is enough to teach them the Analects of Confucius every now and then. In this way, the children's teacher can't teach them well. Before there were only 4 children and 3 teaching methods. Among them, the literacy courses for the twins can be almost ignored. He only needs to focus on Xiaoxiang and Xiaoan. The 2 children, especially Xiaobao's courses are still heavy, so he can't handle it alone. Qi Heiran couldn't find a good Mr. Ping'an at the moment, so he found Mr. Qian, his teacher. This man was also a Jinchi, so it shouldn't be a problem to teach a few children. It's Mr. Qian's turn to come to this class, and the 4 children sit down honestly. Mr. Qian looked at Xiaoan, thought for a while and said, "Fan Shizi, you have learned everything I want to teach them. If you don't want to listen, you can practice writing and memorize it yourself." He originally wanted him to do his homework, but he was practicing calligraphy before, so it was obvious that he had already finished his homework, so it was difficult to have a smart student. Xiaoan smiled, and said shyly, "Mr. said that you can learn the new by reviewing the past, and the students also want to listen to the Analects of Confucius again, maybe they can get something else." Mr. Qian nodded approvingly. The 3 youngest Xing looked at Xiaoan, and felt that what he said was very lofty, but they didn't understand it very well. Their mother said, if they don't understand, they have to ask. This is a good boy. The tiger head and the little lion who think they are good children, they ask together, what is learning the new by reviewing the past? Mr. Qian's face darkened, and he asked, didn't I just teach you second politics the day before yesterday? The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 979. The tiger head, the little lion, and the second prince looked at Mr. Qian blankly, not knowing what the relationship between the 2 was. Xiaoan lowered his voice and said, reviewing the past and knowing the new comes from the Analects of Confucius. For politics second. Sang Xiao looked at Mr. Qian's black face in embarrassment. Mr. Qian had no choice but to ask, are you not paying attention to your homework? He asked them to memorize and copy it many times, but he couldn't remember it. The second prince lowered his head in shame, but Hutu said confidently, we put our heart into it, and we remembered it at the time, but we forgot it when we woke up. The little lion looked at Mr. Qian longingly and asked, Mr. Qian, is there any way to memorize the next text and never forget it? Yes, Mr. Qian said solemnly, smart and intelligent like Prince Xiaoan, with a photographic memory. The twins turned their heads to look at Xiaoan together. Chi turned around and said, but we are not the sons of the second uncle, we are the sons of the father. Mr. Qian felt embarrassed. He only hoped that the meaning of the sentence was not what he thought, otherwise it would be heard by the prince, and he would definitely have a bad life. Who knew that Hutu looked at him staringly and said one more thing, Mr. Qian, is there any way to make us become the sons of the second uncle? The little lion asked him, you don't want to be daddy's son? No, I just need to be the second uncle's son when I'm studying, and I still want to be the father's son at other times. The two brothers had a heated discussion, not knowing how to be the son of the second uncle and the father. Mr. Qian stared at them with black lines all over his face, while the second prince was full of curiosity, is there really a way to change like this? Hutu nodded confidently, as long as we have perseverance, we will definitely find a way. The second prince shouted instantly, then I will be the son of the fourth uncle. Xiaoan said calmly on the side, if you don't shut up, you will definitely copy the homework tonight. The three of them shut their mouths tightly for a moment, but it was already too late. Mr. Qian gave a smirk, and gave the three children a task with 100 big characters when get out of class was over. The three children opened their mouths wide, and the tiger head protested, this is too much, many times more than we usually do. Xiaoan said calmly on the side, it's 3 times more than 10. Yes, that's all, Mr. Inhumane. Mr. Qian, who packed his books and planned to ignore them to leave, staggered and almost fell to the ground. He turned his head to stare at the tiger with a black face, and asked, what did you say? Hutu was so frightened that he hid behind Xiaoan with a swoosh, but shouted fearlessly, Mr. is inhuman, how can you assign us so many homework? Mr. Qian asked word by word, you know what humanity means and just talk nonsense. The little lion despises Mr. Qian, of course we know that humanity means respecting children, loving them, and protecting them. Sir, we are all children, and we are Daki's future. You can't ruin us like this. Mr. Qian almost vomited blood. He really didn't understand how a good human relationship was misinterpreted by these children. The most important thing was that these children shouldn't have heard such words at their age. Mr. Qian felt that these children must have made up words. He stared at them for a long time with his eyes wide open. As a temporary teacher, he really couldn't discuss the topic of human relations with children of a few years old. He firmly felt that this task should be entrusted to Prince. So, a few children came out of Chi Heiran's study and ran to find Mu Yangling. The little lion pouted and said angrily, Mother, didn't you say that humanity means respecting personality and caring for people? How did it become human relations? Hutu also shouted, Mother is Mr. Beza. Mu Yangling was taken aback, and said, the human way I said is the abbreviation of humanitarianism, and the human way you are talking about is the interpretation in traditional Chinese culture. What humanitarianism? Don't talk nonsense to the children. Chi Heiran came in from the outside, picked up the second prince and put him on the couch, and said, your methods don't apply here. As for brothers, if outsiders and common people do not fight or grab like this, they will definitely be skinned and boned. Chi Heiran peeled the oranges for the children and said, I don't care about your kindness and kindness, but you must be ruthless when you should be ruthless. Let me ask you, what will you do if you are bitten by a wolf? The little bear and the tiger-headed lion cub shouted, "Kill it!" Chi-Heiran was satisfied, as expected of his son, and looked at the other three. Xiaobao said, "Ask someone to beat it to death." Xiaoan, destroy the wolf clan. The second prince said weakly, "I want to kill it too." Chi-Heiran was very satisfied. Xiaobao's positioning was very accurate. He was unable to kill wolves, but he could drive people to kill wolves, but Xiaoan was a bit more ruthless, and Wensu was a bit weaker. What about people? What if someone bites a piece of your flesh? The little bear and the tiger-headed lion said fiercely, "Cut off a piece of their flesh, and then ask him why he bit me." Xiaobao smiled and said, "No one can bite off my flesh." Xiaoan tilted his head and asked, "First ask the reason clearly, then kill him, and then kill the cause of this consequence." The second prince looked at them blankly. Chi-Heiran felt that he was too young to let him participate. Instead, he commented on their actions one by one. He didn't directly say whether their choices were right or wrong, but just made up for their loopholes. Tell them that they may have consequences in this way, and it is up to them how they choose in the future. As for Xiaobao's answer, Chi-Heiran told him that this meat does not specifically refer to the flesh on your body, but refers to your interests. Xiaobao said, "That's for profit, no matter what the antecedent is. Since I've matched, I will naturally make him pay the price. If he can be used for me, I'll use him. If he can't be used for me," divided into two categories, those who are beneficial to the people, I will let him go, and those who are not beneficial, will be killed. Seeing that he spoke lightly, Mu Yangling opened her mouth wide. Xiaobao has always been gentle, and she never knew he had such a heart. She looked at Xiaobao, then at Chi-Heiran, and then at a few children with resolute faces, and couldn't help but sighed slightly in her heart. It seems that this is a genetic problem. Also cruel enough. Chi-Heiran was very satisfied with this answer, touched his head, and said to the children, "So don't waste your time playing. I don't restrict you from playing with fishermen's children, but you can't just play with they play. Your identities are there, and when you get bigger, you will have more contact with the upper class, and you can't be ignorant of this." He is not worried about Xiaobao. This child lives in the imperial palace in the capital, and he is always the son of nobles. Although Xiaoxiang and the others also associate with the children of local officials, they are relatively rare. Running up, as Chi-Heiran, who also had a naughty childhood, expressed his understanding, but he couldn't let it go, because the struggle at the bottom was mainly over the survival resources. The competition for various resources is more of a secret contest. The reborn wife is farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 980. The officials in Guangzhou knew that the palace had two young guests. Although some people doubted whether King Rong would really be so kind to his concubine's son, they did not doubt the identities of the two children, but felt that there was more drama in it. Moreover, it is also very strange why the two children came to Guangzhou. It can't really be like what they said, just to visit their fourth uncle and fourth aunt, right? This is not the ancestral home of the Qi family, and they took two servants on the road. Everyone felt that there must be something inside, but no one dared to dig deep. The circle of nobles was so chaotic. Who knew what was going on inside? Since the palace was covering it up, wouldn't it be obvious that they would offend the prince and concubine if they went to investigate again? So the officials not only warned their wives, but also warned their sons not to ask questions. When playing with the young masters of the Wangfuqiagong mansion, they only play games, say what children should say, and don't ask questions that shouldn't be asked. So when Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia took their 6 children to attend the banquet jointly held by the Guangzhou Government Office, the Guangzhou Chamber of Commerce and the Foreigners' Chamber of Commerce, the 6 children quickly got together with the second-generation officials, holding hands happily to play. Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia were invited to the upper seat. Here, their status is the highest. A few foreign female family members stood aside in Western dresses. When they saw Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia being welcomed in, they looked at each other. One after another gathered around to say hello. They are isolated by the Han people, but this is a sorority, they can't always stand on the side. Seeing that Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia are respected, they guess that their status is very high, maybe it is the princess and wife, from them should be able to open a breakthrough. The officials who were talking around Mu Yangling frowned when they saw the foreign women coming, and covered their noses with handkerchiefs. Seeing Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia looking at them curiously, Mrs. his who couldn't help but whispered. Said, Madam, ma'am, these foreign ladies smell very bad, and I don't know how long they haven't washed. Mu Yangling was taken aback for a moment, and the foreign female relatives quickly walked up to her, and there was a burst of fragrance, followed by a faint sour and sweaty smell. Mu Yangling couldn't help but sneeze twice, resisting the urge to back away, smiling at them. Are you the wives brought by some foreign gentleman? We are guests from afar, please sit down. As long as she sits down, she will take the seat and stay far away. Seeing Mu Yangling's politeness, the foreign female relatives bowed their knees to show respect, and sat down on the nearby chairs. Mu Yangling pulled Xiao Xia to sit on the top seat, and she was relieved when she sat down. Mu Yangling used powder and balm, but no spices. Even Xiao Xia rarely wore spices on her body because it was too fragrant. But these foreign female relatives seem to have poured spices on their bodies, and they can't completely cover up the smell on them. Mu Yangling recalled in a daze, at this time, Western Europe was still defecating in the street and didn't take a shower several times a year, no wonder. The officials in the house and the wives of the Chamber of Commerce also held their veils to cover their mouths and smiled, but they talked politely with the foreign women. After all, with the development of Guangzhou port, everyone's cooperation will only increase. Many. And these foreign women's Chinese is only half proficient. Everyone gestures and talks, and communication is not difficult. They are very interested in Daki's tea, silk, etc., while Daki's women are interested in their spices and jewelry. Interested, let's communicate with each other, and do some exchanges and small business, not only can meet each other's needs, but also lay the emotional foundation for the cooperation of the men, and inquire about some news by the way. It is really a win-win situation. Mu Yangling sat on it with a smile all the time, encouraging everyone to talk freely. Xiao Xia secretly looked at the foreign woman below curiously, and said to Mu Yangling in a low voice, I think they are all similar in appearance, and when they are together, they can barely share. Come out who is who, but I always get confused when we separate, this looks too much alike. Mu Yangling laughed and said, we think they look similar, and they think we are the same. They might not be able to tell us apart when we go out and come in again. Really, Xiao Xia felt very strange, she and Aling didn't look alike at all. Mu Yangling pursed his lips and nodded. Westerners can't distinguish between Easterners and Easterners can't tell the difference between Westerners. That's because they usually see less, and when they see more, their eyes get used to distinguishing, and naturally they won't make mistakes. When Mu Yangling was talking to Xiaoxia, a foreign woman sitting below stood up, motioned to Mu Yangling slightly, and asked with a smile, is this beautiful woman the noble princess of Daki? Mu Yangling stopped talking to Xiao Xia, turned to look at her, and nodded slightly with a smile, I am Princess Rongjun, may I ask who you are? Oh, I'm Andre's wife, you can call me Anna. She introduced herself a little lamely, but her expression was very confident. Mu Yangling nodded slightly and praised, Ms. Anna, you speak Chinese very well. This is the first time I see you. Is this your first time in Daki? Oh no, I came here as early as 18 years ago. I have been to China 8 times, and then I stopped coming when I got older, but I can still speak some Chinese. Did they all come with Mr. Andre? Anna smiled and nodded, yes, they all came with my husband. Guangzhou has changed a lot compared to before, and I can hardly recognize it. I heard that this change is all due to the prince and princess of Daki, so this time I followed. Mu Yangling smiled slightly and explained, every place is changing because of the hard work of the people. The people in Guangzhou work very hard, and the emperor has high hopes and support for them. Her changes are taken for granted. Anna nodded and smiled, looking into Mu Yangling's eyes, and said with a smile, I heard that the noble concubine is very strong. I don't know how much you can hold. I wonder if I can see it. The faces of the female family members on Daki's side turned cold, and they looked at Anna and the foreign female family members with hostility. Mu Yangling's smile remained unchanged, but her eyes also turned cold. She smiled and said, oh, speaking of this, your husband should be able to give you an answer. As for my strength, to be honest, I don't know what I can do. Lift heavy things, but if they are as heavy as you, I should be able to lift them up and throw them over the wall. Mu Yangling winked at her mischievously, but we obviously can't make such a joke, right Mrs. Anna? Anna smiled, Princess is really humorous, she is good at telling jokes. Mu Yangling smiled back and asked casually, most of the businessmen who come to Guangzhou to do business are from Portugal and Spain. Are you ladies also from Portugal and Spain? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 981. Europe is not like China. In China, no matter in the past, present or future, most of the upper class of the aristocracy only marry their own people who are well matched, while in Europe, countries intermarry, because in their view, they are of the same blood, which is a bit like the spring and autumn period and the warring states period, the phenomenon of intermarriage between various vassal states. Therefore, although most of the businessmen who came to Daki to do business were from Portugal and Spain, they brought their wives from various countries, including those from their own countries, including those from France, Italy, and Naples. Mu Yangling looked at Mrs. Anna with a smile, and Anna raised her head proudly, my homeland is England. Mu Yangling roughly calculated the ad, but because the history has changed, anyway, the history of China has been changed in a mess, so she is not sure how much has changed in Europe, at least as far as she knows. England went to India to do business in the previous life. It was the end of the 17th century, and the beginning of colonialism was at the beginning of the 18th century, but according to the Chinese calendar, this time should be the middle of the 14th century in the previous life. Around 1345 AD, even if there is a difference, the difference will not be more than 50 years, because the history before the Great Zhou remains unchanged. It has gone through 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms, while the history of the Great Zhou includes the Song and Yuan dynasties. The difference is not too big, that is to say, Da Qi is now equivalent to the Ming dynasty in the previous life before the founding of the People's Republic of China. According to the timeline of Europe in the previous life, England and Scotland are at war at this time, and the relationship with France is not very good. In terms of maritime trade and hegemony, Spain is still the best, followed by Portugal and Italy, but the country is strong. Counting England and Austria should be the most powerful. Mu Yangling originally wanted to inquire about the situation in Europe secretly, but when she saw Anna raising her head proudly, she suddenly felt a little upset. Anyway, everyone knows that Daki doesn't know much about foreigners and their countries, so what if he said something wrong? At that time, a word of hearsay will pass by. Why do they have a clear understanding of Daki, but they don't even know the emperor of the other country and the situation of the country? When Mu Yangling thought about it, he smiled and asked, is the current emperor of England named Edward III? That's right, Anna didn't think that Mu Yangling knew what was wrong with the king of her homeland. Edward III was wise and powerful. Everyone knew him as a matter of course. She smiled politely, my king sends his regards to the emperor of your country. The lady who was born in France sneered, a cruel warmonger. Oh, better than a coward who can only run away, my wise and mighty king is protecting his subjects. The two sides were fighting each other, and Mrs. His who was about to persuade her to make peace when she saw the princess glanced at her. She hurriedly lowered her head and sat down, but her ears were pricked up, and she found that the names of countries and kings kept popping out of their mouths. She felt a headache. She not only did not understand a sentence, but also did not remember. She looked up a little bit, and seeing that the princess listened carefully, she knew that she wanted to inquire about the situation of foreigners in the country. Mrs. His who rolled her eyes and gave everyone a wink. Seeing that it was almost done, she stepped forward to persuade them to make peace, and pulled one away to separate the two. Mrs. His who changed the subject with a smile, and asked about the situation in their country and the places she had been to. She kept secretly watching Mu Yangling, and when she saw that she was really interested and sat up slightly, she knew that she was hitting the right horse. Fart, I can't help but feel a little complacent when I look at it. Seeing this, the other ladies naturally knew how to lead the conversation. Mu Yangling has been in Guangzhou for more than a year, but he seldom goes out to socialize or entertain guests. Even if they want to flatter them, they have nowhere to do it. This time, it is very easy to meet the princess, who is interested in Western affairs. They will naturally pave the way for her. In terms of knowledge from the outside, these officials and businessmen's wives in Guangzhou may not be as good as these foreign wives who travel far and wide, but when it comes to inquiring about news and leading topics, these foreign wives may not be as good as Daki's wives. In addition, they had the upper hand in numbers. After half a day, she knew what Mu Yangling wanted to know and what she didn't want to know. When she looked up, she saw a few children sneaking in at some point, sitting with their chins propped up and their eyes shining. He looked at Mrs. Anna and the others. Mu Yangling twitched his lips, and was about to drive the children out when he heard Little Bear ask Mrs. Anna, the Emperor of France died in your England. Didn't France take revenge on your country? Mrs. Anna wondered, John too died of illness, and it has nothing to do with our country. Why did France seek revenge from us? Little Xiong curled his lips, the king of a country went to be a proton and died in an enemy country, even if it doesn't matter, it will matter, okay. Moreover, France is too weak. Not only the crown prince and prince fled, but also the sons who had been sent out to be protons all escaped back. Apparently the other children thought the same way, and when they looked at Mrs. Mary from France, their faces were very strange. Mu Yangling was afraid that their words would be shocking, so he hurriedly drove them out, saying, these are all female relatives, what are you boys doing here? Hurry up and play with your friends. It was only then that little Xiong remembered the business they had come here, and shouted, mother and concubine, father said he is going home, let us come in to pick you up. In such public occasions, the three little bears are always called by their father, queen, mother, and concubine, and Mu Yangling will also pay attention to calling them by their first names instead of their nicknames. Going back so early, Mu Yangling turned his head to look at the wall clock hanging on the wall, only to realize that it was getting late, and hurriedly got up. I didn't expect that time would pass so fast when I said this, it was already half-afternoon in the blink of an eye. Mrs. His who hurriedly laughed, I'm afraid my mother thinks we are noisy. Mu Yangling said with a smile, why, what you said is very interesting, I like to listen to it very much. Mrs. His who smiled, and suggested, if the princess likes it, I will invite you in the next post, and you must come to join me. We will talk carefully then. Mu Yangling did want to know more, so he nodded with a smile. A group of people hurriedly sent Mu Yangling and Xiao Xia out. The two said goodbye to the foreign wives, and took a few children to find Chi-Heiran and Fan Zijan. Chi-Heiran got impatient for a long time ago, and when he saw them coming out, he glared at the brats and said, "What are you all doing? It would take half an hour to call someone I knew. I would have asked the servants to call." A few children said to him excitedly, "Fourth uncle, let's go and listen to the history of the foreign wives. This is Xiaobao." "Daddy, you don't know that there was a very strange emperor in France who went to England to be a proton, but he died of illness in the end. This is Little Bear. He had 3 sons, one was very courageous and became a prisoner, and the other 2 escaped, and one of them was still the prince. This is the Little Lion. I don't like France. They are so cowardly. Brother Zioan, we will do business with people in France in the future. If they are disobedient, I will beat them up for you. This is the tiger head." Xiaoan actually nodded seriously, and said, "Pick the persimmon softly, that Mrs. Anna's head is raised so high, people in England are not easy to get along with. We can open the gap from France first." The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 982. Mu Yangling and Chi-Heiran looked at them with their mouths wide open, and the children continued to chatter and discuss. "But I want to snatch the Portuguese fleet," the Little Lion said gloomily. "Why can Pedro and the others block us from the outside? Daki's fleet, can't we go and grab theirs?" Hudu said domineeringly, "As long as it is a foreigner's boat, we will grab it." Just as Chi-Heiran was about to reach out to pat them, Xiaobao smiled and said to them, "Tiger Head, Little Lion, we can't always think about grabbing it openly, that would be bad for my Daki's reputation. We have to grab both secretly and openly combined. This is efficient and easy to find a good excuse, like the 4th uncle who took the sailors to pretend to be pirates to snatch the few foreign merchant ships colluding with pirates. Just do it once or twice." "Suspect?" Chi-Heiran raised his eyebrows and asked, "How do you know about this?" "This is a secret. Apart from Zijan and his gang of soldiers, only Zuliang Fibei and Aling at home know. This kid has only been here for a few days to find out about this." Xiaobao smiled and looked at Xiaoxiang, and Xiaoxiang smiled and looked at Sang Xiao. Zioan, the Little Lion and the Tiger Head chuckled and lowered their heads. They overheard it when they heard Fei Bai telling Zuliang to quickly sell the foreign goods in his hand when the Arhat was climbing to the roof. Chi-Heiran gritted his teeth, and Mu Yangling looked at Chi-Heiran with contempt. "That's because you didn't do a good job of keeping secrets, but now except for those foreigners, are you sure that the people in Guangzhou's officialdom don't know? You take those soldiers out for a walk. They are not fools to bring so much goods back in a circle. I didn't intend to hide it from them, but if a few children know about it, what if they shout out? Chi-Heiran is not afraid that the officials in Guangzhou will know that what he robbed were the merchant ships of those foreigners who were in collusion with pirates. Back then they teamed up to rob the merchant ships and fishermen of Daki. Chi-Heiran did not believe that the officials of Daki would reason for those people, but it would be different if a few children accidentally yelled in front of foreigners. Chi-Heiran was about to ask them to keep it a secret, but Mu Yangling said, "Don't worry, the children have learned the secrecy regulations well. Will you make such a noise out? The children despise the adults together, only fools will talk about it. We robbed someone and just had fun secretly. Why did we say it?" Mu Yangling glanced at Chi-Heiran proudly, and asked Xiaobao, "You just said stealing, but what about stealing?" Xiaobao said solemnly, "I heard that Spain and Portugal each have an army that landed in Luzon and fought with the local people." Chi-Heiran also became serious at this time. They came after André. There were not many of them, only 4,000 or 5,000 people, but they took over a lot of places in Luzon in less than half a month. Chi-Heiran looked at Xiaobao deeply, and asked, "Why, do you want to intervene?" Little Treasure nodded with sparkling eyes. Chi-Heiran didn't agree to him immediately, but said, "We'll talk about it when we get home. This kind of topic is too esoteric, and the 4th elementary school said that they don't understand, so when they got home, they ran to play by themselves." When they got out of the car, Fan Zijin saw the 4 children rushing away from him, and took one of them back. Look, it's a tiger head, so he asked, you don't play with the 2 big brothers, what are you doing here? When they went, there were 4 carriages, one for each couple, one for Xiao Bao and Xiao Xiang, and one for 4 children. When they came back, the 6 children crowded into Qi Heiran's carriage. They were talking to Qi Heiran at first. Seeing this, Fan Zijin felt disgusted and had a headache from the quarrel, so he came to Xiao Xia's side. When the coachman arrived at Qi Mansion, the car full of children went straight in. Naturally, Fan Zijin and Xiao Xia had returned to Fan Mansion. Who knew that as soon as they got out of the car, these boys rushed over from the next door. Go straight out here. Huda struggled in Fan Zijin's hand, and seeing that he couldn't get free, he shouted, Daddy has something important to tell big brother Xiaobao, we can't understand it, so we come out to play. What's the big deal? Huda shook his head resolutely. Fan Zijin thought he didn't know, and was about to let him go, but this kid immediately shouted, confidentiality regulations, I can't tell you. Fan Zijin raised his eyebrows, pulled him back by his clothes, and asked with great interest, I can't say either. Tiger Head closed his mouth and shook his head. Fan Zijin was interested. Seeing that the little lion and the others had found that the tiger's head was missing, and was rushing back to rescue him, he let the tiger's head go. He turned to Xiao Xia and said, it's hot, ask the kitchen to prepare more sour plum soup. Call them heat stroke, I'll go and have a look. Xiao Xia hurriedly responded. Seeing him walking away with his hands behind his back, he turned his head and smiled at the children, tapped their foreheads and said in a low voice, you're such a big kid, let's go, I'll take you to drink sour plum soup to quench your thirst, go play again. Huda drooled, is it chilled? No, you people with weak stomachs can't eat iced ones, but sour plum soup is chilled in a well, and it's still cool, and it tastes better than iced ones. Then I want to drink 3 bowls, Huda shouted first. Knowing that he is not immune to food, Xiao Xia is willing to be a younger brother for the sake of delicious food, so she nodded amusedly, as long as there is. In order not to spoil the children's appetite, Xiao Xia certainly would not ask the kitchen to take out so much sour plum soup at one time, pour out exactly 4 bowls, no more, no less, and the one with the tiger's head should be full, so although he can't drink 3 bowls, but also very satisfied. At this time, when Fan Zijin walked to Qi Heiran's study, Qi Heiran had just spread out the chart, sat on the top and looked at Xiaobao and Xiao Xiang, and asked, just tell me what you want. Xiaobao looked at Xiao Xiang, and Xiao Xiang said, Daddy, Luzon is too close to our Daki, the Portuguese are pirates, and the Spaniards colluded with them to rob our Daki's merchant ships, so they are not good people. They are now. If we can occupy Luzon, we may not be able to attack Daki in the future, so we have to destroy them in Luzon. Qi Heiran said, the imperial court will not agree to send troops. We help Lusong fight foreigners, and that is also to make wedding clothes for others. There will be a big commotion. I'm afraid some people will make a fuss about the Forbidden Sea again. Because some people think that if the sea is banned, foreigners will not be able to fight in. The 2 children giggled. Xiao Bao said, so we have to give the king of Luzon a gold medal, and then canonize him as the king of Luzon. At that time, no matter whether we send troops or not, we will take advantage of Spain and Portugal. Little Xiang chuckled, besides, they have occupied our vassal state, so it is only natural for us to rob them of a few merchant ships, because our eyesight is limited, and we may regard merchant ships as warships that invade our vassal state of Daki. Fan Zijin raised his eyebrows, and said to Qi Heiran, this is a good idea. Luzon, Vietnam, Laos, and Siam already have a tradition of seeking titles from our kingdoms. If we add the title of King of Luzon at this time, the other party will only be grateful for Dade's acceptance.